but that 88 is pulling away.
Earnhardt, Johnson, Menard, Blaney. Third-generation star Dale Earnhardt Jr. brings him to the flag. Checkered flag waving. It's over. It's Earnhardt. Earnhardt trying to cover all spots.
Oh, yeah! Good job, Junebug.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. Checkered flag at Talladega.
Why is this one so much fun? Because your grin told so many stories on your cool-down lap.
It's just real emotional. I haven't won here in a long time. It was my daddy's birthday a couple days ago. Just real emotional, man.
My ears grown.
I wish I had been recording about 30 seconds ago. Qualifying is on right now for Kansas, which, of course, is the race preview that we will be previewing on this week's My Nerd World podcast. I'm your host, John Justice. Glad that you are with the podcast again this week. Dale Jr. just barely squeaked in to the second round at Kansas Speedway with 3 rounds of qualifying. They're looking for speed. And, well, we'll talk about that. That's the main focus of the podcast. I got a number of different news items I want to get to in the podcast today. Not to mention a bit of conversation after last week. That was rough. I couldn't have been more off if I had tried. The only thing I will say about what happened at Talladega, just in terms of my prediction of a win and what to watch during the race, which is what I focused the podcast on last week, was the fact that I was right about one thing. If Dale Jr. started falling back early in the race, we knew we were in trouble. And that's exactly what happened. It was such an unfortunate race on so many different levels. But there is a bit of a silver lining for Dale Jr. fans. And I'll tell you what that is in just a moment. So on the podcast today, we'll talk a little bit about Talladega. We'll talk a little merchandise for Mother's Day coming up on Sunday. We have the final Dale Jr.'s Banana Sandwich fundraiser number. We'll share that with you. By the way, I love those banana and mayo sandwiches. I legitimately do. I must have now a couple a week. They're so easy to make, and they're really tasty. My wife still doesn't believe me. She still thinks that I'm just eating them just because I'm a fan of Dale Jr. But no, I actually really, really enjoy them. We'll talk a little bit about what NASCAR is doing to the schedule next year, which I don't agree with, and I'll explain. It actually relates to Kansas and Talladega. Dale Jr. has a brand new television show I'll mention. I'm not going to get into the Sprint All-Star race format revamp. I'm going to save that for the next podcast. We have a number of weeks before we get to the All-Star race, and I'm going to wait to do my commentary on what they're doing with the format. It looks good, but I want to focus. We have a lot of different items to get to on the podcast today, so I really don't want to waste time on that this week. We will, or cover that, I should say, this week. We'll cover that next week. So let's talk a little bit about what happened at Talladega. It was clear from the drop of the green flag that Dale Jr. was in trouble. He couldn't keep the car up front. He couldn't run the car on the bottom. I was paying really close attention to Dale Jr. via a race view on the app, simply because he was having so much trouble. I was keeping a close eye on him. Normally during Talladega, I'll watch a lot of the TV coverage just because it's so exciting, and certainly Talladega was no different this past weekend. But it was clear he was struggling. I mean, the car was fast, but he could not get the car to the bottom of the track. And finally, when he began discussing what the problem was, it was clear that they were going to be in big trouble. And we had a long green flag run there in the beginning, which didn't give them the opportunity to go and make the adjustments necessary. And every time he tried to move to the bottom, he couldn't get down there. There was one moment where they were getting ready to do a green flag pit stop, and I was seriously worried that he wasn't going to be able to get the car down to the bottom of the track to get on pit road because the splitter was rubbing so bad. And as I'm listening to the in-car and I'm looking at what's happening with the car, I'm going back to what happened at Daytona with the same car. And I started to get this, I'm not going to lie, I started to get this sense of dread. I'm like, man, this isn't good. You should not be having this kind of handling issue at Talladega. I mean, that's just, you can have a speed issue, you can have a car that you can't keep at the front, you can have a car that won't suck up to other cars, but if you're talking handling, at a super speedway restrictor plate track, that's usually reserved for Daytona. I mean, it's somewhat understandable that you would spin out at Daytona, and Dale Jr. wasn't the only one during the 500 this year where that happened. But to spin out at Talladega, and when he started to mention that it was rubbing on the splitter, and the splitter was dragging, I really started to get worried. And I'm watching the app, and the app doesn't show when the cars spin. It'll show when the car goes to the infield. It'll show if the car turns all the way around, but if it happens quick and the car rights itself, it's not going to show that. And, I began to hear some of the chatter between Junior and TJ Majors, and it was clear they were in trouble. And then I saw the car slowing down, and the TV's, a good 30 seconds behind, so I'm still waiting to see what happens and hoping it's not bad. And then I watch the footage, and he just, ends up spinning out all on his own again. And I knew then, based off of what he was saying, that the whole problem he had was the splitter was dragging the front, and he didn't have any grip. He just basically was going through the corner, and, with the splitter there dragging, it takes all the, it takes the grip off the front tires, and he just couldn't control it coming out of the corner. He was driving up on somebody, when he got in that loose air, and the car just pushed and spun around. It's like, what are you going to do? The one thing that I will say, let me not get there yet. I'll get to the silver lining here in a moment. So, and then you add insult to injury, and he goes to go back on the track, and now we have the viral video of the steering wheel popping off in his hands and his scrambling to get it back on. And thank the good Lord Almighty that happened under caution, so it didn't cause a bigger problem. Thankfully, the issue of the steering wheel ended up taking precedent over what happened during the race, and so it was kind of, in terms of coverage, it was nice to see the coverage of Dale Jr.'s race dominated by what happened with the steering wheel and the fact that he didn't have it all the way on, which he fully took ownership for. And the video of him grabbing onto the steering column to keep it straight when the car rolled into the grass, the focus wasn't the fact that he ended up crashing twice, because they get the car fixed, they're riding around, and we have an issue with Carl Edwards blowing a tire and slamming up into Junior and destroying Amelia. Amelia's done, by the way. Amelia had a good ride. Amelia needs to go to Dale Jr.'s race car graveyard on his property where his ghost town is. That's what needs to happen to Amelia. And they never need to go and name a car again. Here's the silver lining, though. As a Dale Jr. fan, it's gut-wrenching to see that, especially at Talladega, right? I mean, we already had it at Daytona. We were looking for redemption. I was so hyped for the race on Sunday. If you listened to last week's podcast, I was just jacked for that race. And to have that happen, it was just a kick in the gut. The thing about it, though, and the one positive takeaway was Dale Jr. Because to see his interview and know that he's first and foremost okay, that's the most important part. But then to see him comment and to be smiling about it and going, just kind of shoulder shrug, palms up, head tilt, dude, what are you going to do? He's smiling. It's such a difference in attitude and positivity from the Dale Jr. that we all saw years ago when he was struggling in the early years before Steve Letarte came along at Hendrick Motorsports. So, as a fan, that just makes you feel better. Just knowing, all right, you know what? My driver that I support and watch every weekend and root for and spend money on merchandise, if he's okay, let's move on to next week. Now, it's funny, just as a side note, I saw a commercial for Dover, and I hadn't looked at the schedule in a while, the race schedule. And so I saw this commercial for Dover, and I went, oh man, that stinks. I thought that we had an off weekend coming up. I didn't realize that we had a night race this weekend. So I was watching the rest of the race going, oh, this sucks. Not only is Junior wrecked out twice, but now we don't have a race next weekend to look forward to. And then thankfully when the race was over, I saw the advertisement for Kansas, and I went, oh, cool. I was totally wrong. We have a race coming up at Kansas Speedway this weekend. So that made me obviously much happier than I was, thinking that we had to wait almost 2 weeks before Dale Jr. got back on track again. Now, for those that watched the race last week, I don't have to tell you just how ridiculous that Talladega race was. I've never seen anything like that before. I mean, I've been to Talladega. I've seen the big one. I've seen the wrecks take place, but I've never seen Talladega look like the end of what an old Bristol race used to look like. I mean, it's almost as if Bristol and Talladega have swapped in terms of how many wrecked cars you can have. I mean, I think there were 19 if that cars left running by the end of the race, and only like 7 of them didn't have any damage. There was quite a bit of talk when the race was over about what do we do about Talladega? Is it getting too dangerous? You don't do anything about Talladega. There was no account. I mean, there's nothing you can do about the perfect storm that took place at that race on Sunday. With the weather being as volatile as it was, there was no way to know if it was going to rain. In Talladega, if it rains, that's a track where you could easily get a rain out just because it's so big. And so the environment, the fact that so many good cars wrecked out early, and as more cars wrecked out, it gave more of an opportunity for teams to go and get a win that never have a chance to win. And so it just, as the race progressed, it just got more tense, more intense, and more intense. And there isn't anything to do about Talladega. Talladega is Talladega, and it's always going to be that way. And the reality is, as a testament to the safety efforts of NASCAR, everybody walked away. I mean, sure, some people got bruised up and banged up, but everybody walked away from that race, and everybody was safe. There was a lot of wrecked cars. It cost people a lot of money, but it put on a pretty amazing show. And, I would venture a guess you're not going to see circumstances like that arise again to have that kind of race. Now, NASCAR did go and make a move, and the move that they made was for next season they went and switched the Kansas and Talladega races in the chase. So instead of having Talladega as the final race of the round moving on in the championship, they made Kansas the final race in the round and put Talladega in the middle. And I think the idea was ratchet down the intensity level for those last chase spots moving forward. I mean, we know what happened to Junior last year in that final race. But I just don't like it when NASCAR tries to dictate the intensity of a race by doing a move like that. I liked having Talladega as the final race in that round. I thought that was I think that was a good move. I know why they're doing it. They put it in the middle round. Maybe it'll bring down the intensity level and we won't have a repeat of what happened last week. But you cannot predict the circumstances that are going to arise that's going to create that kind of intensity. I'm with a lot of people, and I said this last year. I wish with the season, I wish that we started and ended it at Daytona. I think you should move that Homestead race at the end of the year to the middle of the season. Maybe put it in July or pick another different July special date and put Daytona as the last race of the year. Can you imagine what a final race to determine the championship with 4 drivers battling it out would be like at Daytona? That would be amazing. All right, merchandise this week. The only thing I want to bring up is Mother's Day is coming up this weekend. If you're looking for something for your wife or your mom, you can go to dalejr.com. They have a bunch of Mother's Day deals going on, female clothing, Dale Earnhardt Jr. gear. I would encourage you, if you're looking for something, might be too late now, but at least you can, write her a card and print up a sheet saying, I bought this for you, honey. But if you're looking for some great Mother's Day deals, go to the website, dalejr.com. And apart from that, there really isn't anything new except for what I mentioned last week on the podcast. Dale Jr.'s banana sandwich promotion ended up raising a total of $159,935 for blessings in a backpack. So if you donated like I did, feel good in knowing that not only did we find a delicious food item in the banana and mayo sandwiches, but also we ended up donating to a worthy cause. Earnhardt, Dale Jr., will be featured this Sunday on CMT. It's a special called NASCAR, The Rise of American Speed, chronicling the history of NASCAR If you're a fan of Dale Jr., you know that he is a historian, a history buff